Hi, welcome to Leadershipisation, all things leadership. This week, I want to talk about your team. Your team. Do you know if your team keep on waiting for you, waiting to ask you things, then you probably didn't inherit that. You probably trained them to do it that way. Yeah? Worth thinking about it. You're probably not doing this training intentionally. However, if they're waiting a whole lot, then it's likely that you've been consistently training them. So think about this. Like when something happens and it's out of the ordinary, it's kind of unclear, or you're under pressure, do your team step in, or do they turn to you? Do they turn and they look at you and they go, well, you're the leader. What do we need to do? Now, this is quite an eye-opening moment because they default to where they're going to feel safe. They default to what feels safe, where they feel capable, and where they feel safe. And they've actually learned this over time. What they've learned also is that stepping up too quickly means they get corrected, they have to do rework, and they get overruled. And often that's exactly what's coming from you. And so your team adjust. Okay, I'll just check more. I'll just come ask you and escalate it to you a whole heap sooner. They'll involve you a lot earlier than they need to. And so what happens is that you then move to a point of being across everything and feeling like you have to be across everything because they don't know what they're doing and they can't make the decisions. And because you needed to be involved in everything, nothing moves without you. Now, your team is potentially very capable and dependent. But if you're repeating this leadership pattern all the time, they stop thinking for themselves very quickly. And if they're always checking in with you, then their trust in themselves has been lowered. My name is Beth Bergen. I'm a global leadership communication coach, and I'd love it if you join me today as we discuss this. Look, this is especially important if what you've already realized is, okay, I am the key to all the issues that are going wrong here. I am the key to this. So what we need to do is look at your leadership behaviors and the leadership behaviors that reinforce this dependency. And perhaps they're behaviors that you don't even realize that you're doing. I've got 5 talking points today, and the first of these is this. Your team didn't start waiting. They learned it. They're waiting. They're waiting for approval. They're waiting for information. They're waiting for the next step. This is learned behavior. And what happens is that they repeat. Individuals, we all do it. We repeat the behaviors which reduce risk. So if they stepped in quickly and they got corrected, they had it all over explained to them, they got extra work or rework to do, if they were overridden, if they were negated or undermined in some way, then what they're learning is, don't do that again, not going there again. And their brain automatically takes them to the safest pattern available. And that safe pattern is to wait because you've taught them that. Like it's really interesting because often we think as leaders that we're empowering people. And so we give them this formal empowerment, like we delegate it to them, don't we? But what actually happens is that when we have these daily responses that are correction and over-explaining and negating and reworking, then what we're doing is that any empowerment that we've given our team is actually being negated by our daily response. Now, a lot of this happens in those little micro moments. It's about the tone of your voice. It's about the timing. It's about questions that you're asking, and it's about the language that you're using. It's also about the corrections that you might be giving them and whether or not you follow those things up. We teach people what's safe. We teach people what's safe. And the weird thing is that we're doing this believing that we're doing the right thing. Interestingly, teams adapt really fast to our style. They adapt really fast to what's rewarded, what's corrected, or what's punished. So you're actually teaching them to wait. Yeah? The second point is this. Over-involvement on your part, over-involvement teaches that the autonomy that you're giving is conditional. So if you jump in early, what you're doing is limiting their independence. If what you're doing is, I'm just going to check, I'm just going to tweak this, I'm just going to make sure that this is what's needed, then what you're saying is, I don't fully trust your judgment. If you're handing ownership over, I should probably restate that by saying when you hand ownership over, make sure that you give enough room for difference, for different perspectives, for imperfections. And make sure when you do hand it over that it's not about you constantly supervising them, because if you're always watching, down goes their confidence. If what you're doing is continually checking and tweaking, and I just have to make sure, then what you're actually doing is undermining them rather than being supportive. And for many leaders, they think that this is supportive behaviour. Actually undermining your team, because when your team continually escalate to you, that's their safest professional move. That's the safest thing for them to do. And so we build a dependence, and it grows instead of performing. Instead of your team performing, they build the dependence. And it happens in high-performing teams, not just in lower-performing teams, because what they're actually doing is learning from you that getting it right matters more than thinking or demonstrating their initiative. So they're not thinking for themselves, because what they've learned is that getting it right is the most important thing of all. And you taught them that. The third point is this. Your need to stay involved may be exactly what's holding your team back. Now, for some of us as leaders, we think the more involved we are, the more value we're bringing to our role, the more value we're bringing to our team. And it feels useful, it feels important, it feels responsible to be across absolutely everything. However, if you're too close to these things all the time, if you're there tweaking, checking, making sure that you're across everything and that you're responsible for it, the team never gets to experience the full weight of ownership, because you're taking it back from them all the time. Now, this is where it gets tricky for some of us. This is where it gets tricky, because stepping back can look like a bit of a loss of relevance, Or if I step back, I'm not going to be across everything. I won't be so relevant to everybody. I won't feel so important. And as a result, we stay involved. And when we stay involved, it's like we're going around that circle again. We stay involved. We undermine our staff. We teach them how to wait. Our team is there, and everything starts pulling back to you in the leadership role. Now, what this means is that you're not growing as a leader, and neither are they. And that's my fourth point. You can't grow leaders if you don't let them use their own judgment. Well, you need future leaders who've been exposed to making decisions, to using their own judgment about things. And how do they develop this? They develop this by making calls, by weighing up the risk, by learning and recovering from their mistakes, by dealing with the consequences, all the things that you potentially have done up to this point. It's really important that you expose your team to judgment, because they won't develop any leadership skills at all if what's happening is that you're checking, you're softening decisions, you're redirecting. They lose that long-term capability because they're scared. You won't let them. They're scared. And so your succession weakens, decisions are slowed down, and there's too much dependency in an organization on a few key people. Now, when you stop and look around you, you might be initially in this conversation, we're looking down, you leading your team. You might also want to look out and up, because it could be that whoever is managing you is not letting you be all that you can be in your role. And as I said, succession weakens, decisions slow down, and we end up having too much dependency on a few key people. And so what this is that your desire for short-term control creates long-term capability gaps, because what we know for certain is that when someone is in a new leadership role, or when we are looking to build their capability, the skills that got you to where you are now aren't the skills that are going to get you to the next level. So as I've said here, some of this is about stepping back, leaning back, and allowing others to learn from their mistakes and giving them the room to actually do that. The fifth point I want to talk to today is this. If you're going to create momentum, and growth in your team, that requires permission from you to think, to act, and to get it wrong. Now, this is really hard for lots of leaders to cope with. So what this comes down to, quite simply, is that your team needs really clear decision boundaries from you. They need to know what they can decide. They need to know when to escalate it to you. They need to know what success looks like, and they need to know how mistakes are going to be handled. So those four things: what they can decide, when to escalate it, what success looks like, and how mistakes will be handled. Now, what you'll find is that if you can share these four really clear decision boundaries with your team, their initiative will grow. It grows a whole lot, because they feel as though they're being coached, not punished through any mistakes that they might make. So making a mistake becomes more comfortable for people. They learn that they can fail without fear because they're learning from their mistakes. Now, what you need to understand in your leadership role is that this doesn't mean that I'm saying to you, have your team take a whole lot of careless risks. That would be crazy. In order for your team and the individuals in it to grow, they need to be supported to fail without fear. They need to have permission to think, to act, and to get it wrong. And this will result in the growth and the kind of momentum that you're looking for. You won't become central to every decision. Everything won't keep getting pulled back to you because you've built the skills and you've built the trust. And more importantly, you've built the behaviors that allow your team to grow. So I've got one awesome leadership intelligence tool to share with you today, and this is what I've called the initiative gap check. So over the next week, I want you to notice what you're noticing. Notice what you're noticing. So looking around you at what's going on in your team, think about what happens and how often people are escalating things to you, how often they're waiting for someone else to make a decision for them, how often they're checking in, or how often they're asking you for permission. And notice when these things are happening. And when people come to you, instead of feeling really important and very resourceful and solving that thing straight away, ask this question. What decision did you feel unsure that you were allowed to make? What decision did you feel unsure you were allowed to make? Now, listen then for a pattern, because this is about feedback for you and your leadership style. That's why this question is so important. Was it that they felt like they didn't have the authority? Was it that they feel that maybe they thought, or they were afraid they were going to be wrong? Maybe they were expecting to be corrected, so they didn't trust the decision. Maybe they were just plain old used to you deciding. Yeah, so listen for that pattern. And when you see the pattern, then what you're going to be able to do is to set a new boundary. And the new boundary might look something like this. You can make this decision without me when, leave a gap, and into that gap, what you're going to do is put some points. So you can make this decision without me when these things are true. Come to me only if this happens. So let me say that again. You can make this decision without me when X is true. Come to me only if Y happens. Now, what this does is it shifts your thinking from why aren't they taking any initiative here to a much more positive, what permission, what confidence, what clarity is missing, and how can I give it to them? Yeah. So this is a really important tool for you to be thinking about, because you want to build your own team. They are waiting because it's safer than doing something. That's a bit of a hard land. So your reflection question for this week is this. Where might your leadership presence be teaching people to wait, even when your words are telling them to take initiative? Now we've explored today all the things. Yeah, I'm telling them this, and then I go and I check, and I double check, and I want to ask again, and I undermine their decisions. So reflecting on it, ask yourself this question, make some notes, come back in the next day or later in the day, ask the question a few times, and what else, to really get to the bottom of it. Where might your leadership presence be teaching people to wait, even when your words tell them to take initiative? As I said before, they are waiting because it's safer than acting. Who's taught them it's safer? You have. So our key takeaways here is that this is a pattern. This is a pattern in your team's behaviour, and it can change. It's a pattern in your own leadership behaviour, and you can change that. Our team only want to use their own judgment. They only want to make the decisions and take the next step forward themselves when it feels safe to do that. And setting up that, you can make a mistake without failing is really important. The other thing that I think is a real key takeaway here is that you build capacity. You build capacity of others when you step back. If capable people are holding back in your team, if they're hesitating, then that's actually feedback for you. It's feedback for you. And it tells you what you're doing that is making your leadership safe, but it also tells you what you're doing that is making your leadership unsafe for others. So they're responding to your consistent behavior, and you're the person who can actually change that. So if you're central to every single decision, if you're feeling as though everything slows down without you there, if you think your team is demonstrating poor initiative, it's likely that it's not a workload issue. It's much more likely that it's you and it's a leadership issue. So if you're ready to shift without lowering your standards, because a lot of people think, I don't want to change this. This is how I maintain the standards. But if you're ready to shift your leadership without lowering your standards, then use the link that will be in the chat or use the QR code that's on the screen and make a time to have a chat with me. Because independence in your staff needs to be really deliberately built. And if everyone still needs you, you haven't built a team yet, but it's not too late. Let's get something happening for you. Let's talk would be the ideal thing. So thank you so much for being here today. If you've got any questions or comments, pop them in the chat. This is a pre-recording, so we won't get back to you straight away, but we will get back to you in the next few days. Hashtag replay if you're watching a replay. In the meantime, enjoy your week reflecting on where your leadership presence might be teaching people to wait and what you can do to encourage them to be taking their own initiative. See you next week. Bye now.